Good afternoon. My name is Kathy Brandon, and I'm here to talk to you about STEAM across the curriculum. How can you integrate STEAM into all of your core classes and throughout the arts? So let's get started. How to engage students in projects for all areas. STEAM incorporates science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. Now, most people are familiar with STEM, but the STEAM piece is a little bit new with the A. The arts are an integral part of STEAM because we have students who struggle on a daily basis in their core classes and don't feel success much of the day. But when you allow them to work with their hands, to innovate, to create, to become part of a process, they have this engagement and buy-in to their education that is different than when they sit in a classroom necessarily listening to a lecture or trying to work through worksheets or problems on paper and pencil. They will be doing all of those things in STEAM, but they will be doing them in a hands-on approach. And for some students, this is critical to their learning. STEAM starts with the design thinking process. And as we'll go through this, it begins with empathy. Every one of the projects that you will see represented began with empathy. Who is it that you are creating this project for? Why is it that they need this? Why does it matter to that person? These are some of the questions that the students ask. There's a lot of research that goes on at this stage where you understand the background of the project, you understand the need for the project, and you're front-loading students with all of this information before they even begin to define the problem that exists. And that's stage 2, which is to create a point of view based on the user's needs and insights. What are the needs of the person that you are creating this for? Why is this necessary? How can we make this work within the constraints that we're given? The third step is to ideate or brainstorm, and that can be done in many different fashions. We can use sticky notes that are put up along the wall. Students go and put their ideas underneath. They can tell why something is a good idea, why they think it may not work. There are many different formats. There's Socratic circles. There's all kinds of ways for students to come together and ideate their ideas. The next one is to prototype. So in the real world, and we want to make connections to the real world as much as possible, engineers and architects and graphic designers, builders, they're all coming together and putting a prototype that shows their ideas in small form. And so for our students, we talk about this, that the prototype is extremely important so that you can work out the kinks. Obviously, we can't build huge structures for practice. And so prototypes become very critical in order to understand the areas that might need to be tweaked or redone. The next stage that we work on is testing. So in this stage, they say what worked, what didn't work, why did it work, why didn't it work? Failure becomes something that the students embrace instead of being afraid of. When we fail, we learn how not to do something. When we fail, we learn that there are other methods to coming to the same conclusion. And so it's really valuable for students to embrace mistakes, embrace failures as part of a process of learning. You'll notice here under the ISTE standards, we have learners and leaders, citizens, collaborators, and designers, analysts. There are all kinds of areas in which STEAM can be integrated into the curriculum. So let's keep going. So under the standards, for those of you that are required to meet those, you can use the Gen standards, next gen standards. You can use the middle school engineering and design standards. And part of that is that you want to incorporate what are called the 4 C's: collaboration, critical thinking, communication, and creativity. In each one of these projects that you will see represented going forward, try to incorporate all of those, if not most of them. All right, so here's our first project. And in this project, the students were given materials and asked to create an instrument or create something out of an instrument. I tried to put a standard down here that you might be able to meet with your students. talk about a little bit of the subject areas that would be covered. So this would be an arts or electives area with music that could be part of the STEAM process here. 2 students worked on this project in 8th grade, and they created these xylophones. Blue Man Group was the inspiration for that. And so she wanted to create her own Blue Man Group xylophone. It was important to her to make all the pieces to it. And so she found somebody on YouTube that had actually done something similar, and they had their plans. So she downloaded the plans and figured out how to cut the pipes to just the right heights for the different notes, build the stand, put everything together. It was a great project, very involved, very hands-on, very creative, allowed her some uniqueness and innovation to be involved with this. And then our other student, he wanted to use the guitar, but not in a typical manner. He wanted to make a mailbox out of it. So his project is taking something that was an instrument, cutting it down, reformatting it to be used for something on a daily basis. And so he chose a mailbox. He's not quite done with it, but this is a work in progress. And he has done a fantastic job of integrating the guitar as the mailbox base. Okay, the next project is a clock project. So in our lab, we did not have a clock present, and time was a constant issue. We would get so involved in what was going on in the lab, we would forget that we needed to go on to the next class. And I inadvertently was constantly apologizing profusely to the teachers. Sorry, your students are late. It's my fault. We lost track of time. So in this project, the students were asked to design a clock piece around the theme of STEAM, and then to put that design on CorelDRAW or Tinkercad. And then we transferred that to the laser cutter, and they cut out their parts. Now, almost all of these have 2 different, if not 3 different colors to them, which means that the students were cutting these out multiple times and then piecing in the separate pieces. A much more difficult project, but a lot of them were really excited to take that on. One of the students went outside the norm and did his in wood, which was fantastic. Again, as an educator, you want to see your students taking risks, trying something new, getting excited, engaged, have buy-in to their learning. You let these kids build their own ideas, and they were working through math without even realizing it. They were doing circumference. They were doing the area that we had to deal with. They were dealing with time. So there was a lot of different connections for the students that were working on this to their core curriculum without them even realizing that's what was going on. Our kitchen staff loved the clock so much they asked if the students could make a second clock that involved kitchen related themes. So this is the 4 pieces that are over here were 4 of the ones that got completed. As you can see, they all relate to kitchen items. In this project, our 8th grade students have the honor of going to the Teton Raptor Center out in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. They take an 8th grade trip and they learn about nature in Yellowstone, and they work with the Raptor Center to learn about the birds. And it's a really wonderful project for the students to be involved in, but we wanted some more buy-in. And so we asked the center what we could do to help them. And as it turned out, they had created these board games and they needed game pieces for them. So the students were able to create these game pieces in Tinkercad and then 3D print them for the Raptor Center. Now, in this section, they needed to create boxes for the game pieces. So the students had to figure out the measurements, they had to cut the boxes, put the boxes together, and then design how to put the Raptor Center logo on the center top of that. Lots of measuring involved, lots of spatial issues here for students to work through, lots of creative thinking, critical thinking going on. And for these kids, it's a real world connection. So they knew they were going there. They knew they were going to be taking this product to the Raptor Center and seeing the reactions of the people. When you get a chance to have an authentic audience for some kind of a project that you're working on in your classroom, it always has numerous benefits for these students. when they got to see this woman's face and excitement over this, that means a lot to them. Now it's not just something that they're doing in the classroom and they're done with it, move on to the next project. Instead, they're actually getting to watch the reaction and be a part of this process. In this lower corner, the students did some VR. So we're lucky enough to have VR headsets at our school. And we did 2 VR field trips, one to the art museum that the students would be going to while they were out in Wyoming, and to Yellowstone to look at the nature and the environment. All really great experiences for them. As you can see, the excitement of the student is wonderful. So for our students who all have language-based learning differences, anytime that they have this connection to something physical, something that doesn't necessarily involve them reading language, but speaking it or experiencing it, it comes out to be a wonderful time for them, a wonderful connection to education. And so we try to incorporate that as much as possible. Okay, so this is my ELA connection, the construction of utopian societies that accompanied The Giver. This involves imagination and critical thinking, creativity, and collaboration. Students worked in teams after conducting some short research, answering some questions, drawing on the sources of the book and some other sources that were provided for them. And then they focused their questions on their society and what their society would include. So they had to come up with transportation and government and education and sustainability. How would people live? And so the students worked through The Giver in their ELA classroom, and in my class, they worked through building their utopian societies. Many of these parts are 3D printed. These are very tiny houses that are in this one. Some of these parts were laser cut. A lot of them were just built with basic cardboard. So if you don't have access to a laser cutter or a 3D printer, that's perfectly fine. Paper, cardboard, glue, that's all you really need to accomplish this. And so the students worked through a project problem and challenge-based activity. It was wonderful. If you're looking for books that might connect with STEAM, I have a link down here that you can go to and look for. At the end of this project, we brought in a team of representatives to judge each of the utopian societies' criterias. So the judges were given a list of what the students had to talk about and touch on, and had to have included in their utopian societies. And so they walked around, they listened to the spiel from the kids, and they checked off that each of those things were represented. It was wonderful accountability for the students, but also generated an enormous amount of excitement from the students to get to share what they learned about their society and why they were excited about their society. So this was a really wonderful project. It took us several weeks, but it was totally worth the time because they gained a deeper knowledge of utopian societies and dystopian societies, and then felt that they could go back into their ELA classrooms and bring that discussion forward. So some kids that might struggle in a lit circle really benefited from the hands-on piece of it. And then before you knew it, they were talking about their carbon footprint, and they were talking about sustainability, and they were talking about technology in their communities. And all of a sudden they had all these things to add to the conversation that they may not have felt they had to add before. So this was a wonderful experience. All right, in this one, our students went to a school for other abled students that mostly are in wheelchairs or walkers. Some have limited speech, some have limited mobility. And so the students buddied up with a partner, and they asked their partner a lot of interview questions to get to know them a little bit better. We're about there 45 minutes to an hour with the student. And when they came away from it, the wonderful thing as an educator for me to hear was initially all the worry about connections before we went in, and coming out, hearing them say things like, oh, they like going to the mall and shopping, and hey, my person really likes sports just like me, or video games. And so they were able to make that connection that these students really aren't that different than them. And that was fantastic for me to hear. They went back, they designed and built all these adaptive games for the students in our lab. They worked on like a Plinko game with WWE symbols in it because the student was really into that. They built a Jenga game, and because the student really needed to have something that was adaptable for their hand movements, they were able to build a maze. And one of the students said, you know, I'm not sure that my person will be able to grip the sides of my maze very clearly. Can we do dowels and tennis balls? And so that's what she did. She added these dowels and tennis balls. And because her person had limited mobility of their hands, they were able to grip the tennis balls and twist and turn the maze to get it done. And there was so much excitement when we went back in December with the games, spent the day playing with them, experiencing all of them. In this one in the corner here, you'll see a little popcorn bucket. And this student built a Guess Who game. And it was amazing because not only did she design it, but then she hand drew every one of the cards for her partner. And I just think that was a wonderful experience. Again, allowing for that creativity to come through. Lots of buy-in from the students. It was amazing. In this lower corner, you'll see these are head straps. This was the inspiration, this picture for this. We decided during COVID in the early stages to create these headbands for local EMTs and hospitals and nursing homes so that they could get some relief from the bands on their ears. They also created these shields, which went to many local hospitals in Philadelphia and in New Jersey to protect the staff while they were going through this. All of this was designed and printed on our 3D printers. So fantastic experience, adaptive, wonderful opportunities for real world application and buy-in for our students. Okay, this project is called Prosthetic Hand Project for Enable. And Enable is a fabulous, if you're not familiar with them, fabulous group of volunteers across the globe who are working to get prosthetics into the hands of as many people in developing countries as they can. The students needed to know how to go through the design process. They needed to test out their theories. They needed to work with the different parts that were 3D printed, do some adaptations, learn about thermoforming. It was an amazing experience that allowed our students not only to do something now locally, but globally. They had the opportunity to meet with one of the women who's in charge of this project in a Zoom call. And they told her, hey, we're technical writing here, trying to redo the directions. There are some things that we came across. We are a school of students with language-based learning differences, and these directions were really hard for us. Do you mind if we rewrite these directions and send them to you for some other students who might have the same concerns? Wonderful advocation for themselves to this person. Of course, she responded positively and told them, go ahead, yes, absolutely. And so they drew more pictures, they had more arrows, they did more steps in there so that people could really make this work for them if they had a language-based learning difference. Lots of critical thinking and creativity went into this. As you can see, these are the parts up here. Each one of these parts is individually printed on the 3D printer. And then this is what an assembled hand looks like. And you can see a picture of two students over here that are working on it. Fantastic opportunity. I would recommend this to anybody. Lots of tie-ins for social studies, ELA, science. Okay, now we had a little bit of fun. So during COVID, we had an opportunity to work from home with our students, and we wanted to make sure that we got some time outside. So we incorporated Bernoulli's principle and talked about flight. We incorporated drag and lift and thrust and speed. And we did this all with paper airplanes, which was an amazing opportunity for the students. We talked about how flight can help people. So again, remember, I want to start with empathy. So one of the things that we talked about is in developing countries, they can't get blood to them in a timely manner. But some incredible folks have developed a drone that can deliver blood in a very short window of time and saves many mothers after giving birth who may otherwise have not made it. This drone is saving lives. And so we got to watch this video about this drone and how the people created it and all of the processes that they went through the failures that they went through before they got it to do exactly what they needed to do. For me, this was a prime example for my students of how something just doesn't happen instantly. You're not expected to think of it and then the next thing you've created it. It went through all the different process and prototypes that they had developed before they got to the one that worked successfully. So we had a great time with this. Also suggest that you check out these okgosandbox.org. The guys in this are very funny, do a lot of Rube Goldberg experiences. It's relatable to the kids. They really enjoy it. That would be my recommendation for that. All right, so sustainability, another hot topic for us, talking about the landfills and how we need to be doing something to change the carbon emissions that are going out, the carbon gases that are going out, the carbon footprints that you have, and what can we do as a society? Do you think about what you have in your closet on a daily basis that is really going to take up place in our landfill? And so we started with sneakers. And the kids are like, I started out by asking them, how many pairs of sneakers do you have? And the kids were like, I have 5 pairs of sneakers. Okay, so what do you do when your sneakers don't fit anymore? Well, I throw them in the trash. Okay, then what happens when, you send that to the dump? And so we talked about what could we do with these sneakers instead of throwing them in the landfills. You'll see some creative ideas. This one's a planter. This one is bird feeders. This one is a lamp out of a boot, not a sneaker, but it was a shoe. So that was okay, acceptable. And then we talked about how shoes are made and how each part might be made in a different part of the world. And then those parts have to be collected and taken to another central place to be put together, and how all of that impacts our environment because of all those places and factories have to be running to produce your one pair of shoes that you have. And so the students were given the objective to come up with a sustainable shoe, try to make it recyclable, and also make it made in the USA. We watched a whole bunch of different videos of some really cool people making shoes in a different manner, some that can be broken back down and reused. So everything in the shoe is broken down and then they make another shoe out of it. So incredible. We talked about different companies that are donating shoes for every time that you buy a shoe, or providing shoes for other people in other parts of the countries. And so it was a really good experience for the students to go through that. If you look on teachengineering.org, you can find some of these wonderful objectives for the students to try. Okay, this one is a trip we took to a place called Face to Face, and they are a local organization that helps people who are in need of dental or medical care, food, clothing, lawyer services, health services. And so our students decided to create, based on the idea of the boxes for the Teton Center, they created individual boxes for the people that come to this center so that they had a place to put their things that was bright and cheery. A lot of them live in, maybe they rent a room. Some of them might be in shelters. And so they wanted them to have something bright and cheery that they could put their items in and carry around with them. Each of the students spent time in ELA reading the story Homeless Bird, making connections, coming up with poetry or verses that they liked that they could put on the boxes. These were laser cut. Again, each of the students, and you can see in the picture, are assembling the boxes themselves. So great gratification, again, to create these boxes and then take them to the center. They got to meet many of the people while they were there, learn about the experience, and then they were invited to come back and play games with the people or serve food. Obviously, we will have to wait until after COVID to accomplish that, but I'm really excited for the students to get this opportunity to go back and have an authentic experience interacting with the clients who come to face. So creativity, communication, collaboration going on here. Wonderful experience for the students. In this one, we did both a tiny house project and geometry cities. So the students talked about sustainability, our carbon footprint, how can we reduce our carbon footprint, and they designed and built out of Legos or cardboard, whatever they had available. Again, we did this while we were virtual, so they had to use what they had at home. We were able to do cost analysis on how much this would cost you to do. What would it save you? What would it save our planet if we were able to reduce the size of our homes, if we stopped cutting down so many trees to create these enormous homes? So lots of tie-ins there. Geometry City, the students were front-loaded with a large amount of geometric shapes, and then were asked to incorporate those shapes into their buildings for the project. So you can see in these 3 pictures, the students are working really hard to come up with their design. And wonderful experience. They evaluated a solution to a complex problem, all real world. So there's lots of tie-ins there for them, and a lot of opportunity for creativity. In this one, the students did some music with makey-makeys and bananas, and that was a lot of fun. So we were able to incorporate music in there, and technology, which was fantastic. In the lower 2 section pictures, they are creating mazes that they ran their Spheros through. Spheros are those very small robots run through your iPad or your phone. And for them, this is all about wonder and not worksheets. And so they get an opportunity to either retell a novel by creating a route of places that the person in the novel went. They can do math problems, and they go one direction if they get the math problem wrong with a reinforcing problem, or if they get it right, they go a different direction and try a different type of problem. There's possibilities in science to look at the direction that something goes in your body. It can even just be from when you swallow some food, what happens to it, where do germs go. There's all kinds of tie-ins that you can do for different subject areas, certainly across the entire curriculum. So this allows students to do something fun with the robots, but also be letting you know that they understand what you're teaching them. Sometimes instead of a paper pencil test, it's okay to give them something like this and have them retell you the same information that you're looking for, but just in a different manner. And so this was a really fun activity for the students. We thoroughly enjoyed getting to experience the Spheros and the makey-makeys. On these pages, you will find that I have added all kinds of links for you to different projects that we've done throughout the years here at our school and beyond. Talk about some competitions that you can be involved with, places that I've gotten some of the parts, some VR opportunities, clubs that are available, all kinds of links to music and art and tech, literature. Don't forget to do virtual field trips. This is another thing that's really helpful for the students. Again, some more ideas for you. Tiny house movement, things that we've done, a homeless unit, fantastic homeless unit all across the entire curriculum. I've told you how every area was involved. And then I added some steps to integrate STEAM into your program in your school. So feel free to take some time to look through these. I would say that a family STEAM night is definitely a way to engage your community and your staff and the families. And you can get a lot of donations from families to start your STEAM lab if you don't have any materials currently available. Here's some other ideas for you here, and then some equipment that you might want to start with. And if you don't have a lot of money, you can start with the ones at the top. If you have more money, you can do some of the ones at the bottom. Also included are some do's and don'ts for the STEAM programs and how to integrate it into your curriculum, and all my references. So thanks so much for taking the time to come to my session today. I hope that you found something valuable on how you could integrate STEAM across your curriculum at your school. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. My email is on the bottom of the first page. And have a wonderful time at the STEAM Summit. Thanks so much.